So this is Dave Dubois. I'm over in the Albuquerque forecast office, and this is the September New Mexico Drought Monitoring Workgroup call. And let's go around the call and announce your name so we can say hi.
Ollie Reed, Albuquerque Journal.
Anne-Marie Massar, USGS.
Christopher Romero.
This is Sigmund Silver. I do a weather column.
Ken Richard and Molly Magnuson for the New Mexico Office of State Engineer.
Curtis McFadden, Army Corps of Engineers, Albuquerque District.
Brian Geyer, National Weather Service.
Sean Bennett, National Weather Service.
Alrighty, it sounds like a couple more folks joined. We're just going through announcing.
Yeah.
So who joined us?
Raymond came in. Raymond Aveda.
Oh, hi Raymond. Anybody else?
Hi Dave, this is Victor Murphy from Weather Service Southern Region Headquarters.
Hi Victor.
Is there a drought monitor
Hello, everyone.
person?
Is there a drought monitor author on the call? Does anybody know who the author is? I didn't check.
Yeah, it's Eric Lubinhaven.
Okay, Eric is okay.
What's his last name?
Lubinhaven?
Lubinhaven.
I think he was on, wasn't he? Maybe he was on last week. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a few folks out, but I think we've got all the presentations. So Brian's going to go ahead and get started with their weather service drought weather climate outlook. Everybody it should be up on GoTo now.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Good.
What is that?
If you click up on the display setting and you click the first one, you'll get rid of that.
Okay, full screen. Cool.
So how's that now? Do you see full screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. Well, most folks did pretty well last night. Otherwise, it's been dry. This is a look at the first 20 days of September up on the upper left. This is the monthly precipitation derived from PRISM. And on the bottom right, the percent of normal derived from PRISM. So lots of red and orange, and most folks can attest to that. There's been very little precipitation for the month of September so far, which is a little different than what we've had the last few years, and we even had a state fair without getting washed out, so that's a little bit different. But last night we made up for it in some areas of the Southwest. One of the Cocorad stations Dave was noting around Mule Creek had over 2 inches. And a lot of folks around Albuquerque, on the east side especially, picked up around 1/2 inch to 6/10. So that's pretty decent. Unfortunately, it wasn't more spread out, but again, it looks like we have a couple more days worth of precipitation chances here coming up. Looking at August, same thing. Upper left is the monthly precipitation. Bottom right is percent of normal, and it was dry for most folks again. So really, since July, we started out really good, and then we just sort of petered out here. Except if you're in the Northeast, Clayton has been the magnet for precipitation, and some folks up in that area on the order of 25 to 30 inches of precipitation for the year so far. So they're doing really well up there, and the Northwest did well also in August with that monsoon plume mostly focused over Arizona. So statewide average was 80% of normal. This is the first time in several months that we've seen an average below normal, and that may happen again in September depending on what we see for the rest of the month. But overall, statewide average precipitation was 1/2 inch below normal. If we look at the charts that we've been showing here for quite a while now, you'll notice here August has been pretty dry over the last several years. You have to go back to 2008 before we had an above normal August. And that's been followed by a good July. So kind of an interesting bimodal distribution, I guess you could say, for July and August precipitation across the state. And then going back to 2006, everyone remembers that year. That was our wettest August on record. Looking at the SCIP data by climate division for the 30, 90, and 100-day periods. So on the far left, we've got the 30-day average, and this is, again, the first time in quite some time we've seen all the climate divisions coming in below normal for the 30-day period. Particularly climate division 5, that's the Central Valley, and a lot of the eastern plains have been really dry as well. Now going back 90 days, because it's been so dry for the past 2 months in climate division 7, which is the southeast plains, we're around 80% of normal now for that area for the 90-day period. So we're starting to see some of these values deteriorate somewhat, but not, it's not terrible. We've been in a much worse situation here before. And then going back to the 180-day period, all climate divisions still above normal, but we'll have to see how that pans out going through the next 30 days if we don't start wetting up here. Going back to January, we are now the third wettest January to August period on record, with almost 4 inches above normal for the statewide average. And you have to go all the way back to 1941 again, which is the wettest year, or wettest January to August period at that time on record. So we're doing good for the year. For the water year, still doing quite well, 14th wettest with a statewide average of 127% of normal. And it looks like you have to go back to the late 90s before you see a water year this wet. For the 12-month period, we're still nearly 5 inches above average and tied for the 8th wettest at 139% of normal. So you got to go back to the early 90s before you see a wetter period. Going back 24 months, we're still above average and quite wet for the state. But if we get into the 36-month period, we start dropping off. So that's when we're pulling in some of those really dry years that we saw, like 2011, 2012. Oh, and then slides are going crazy here. 60 months, this would be the 5-year period, still more than 8 inches below normal for the statewide average. So long-term drought conditions, and we've talked about this on several of our calls, how the reservoirs are really suffering across the state still, with the exception of like the Pecos Basin. Here's the NASA Sport Land Information System, the deep soil moisture going down 200 centimeters. This is the 1-month change from our last meeting. So, this can attest to how dry it really has been across most of the area, with the exception of like around Catron County and western Cibola County. So these are some fairly significant values, on the order of 10 to 20% drier in the column than we were last month at this time. But again, the Southwest is doing well still, and it's actually they're doing better than they were earlier in the summer when conditions were so dry. So kind of a flip-flop here from what we were looking at earlier in the summer. Looking at the top 10 centimeters of the soil, this is the volumetric soil moisture, and the Rio Grande Valley sticks out, and then much of the eastern plains, quite dry. There's really not a whole lot of soil moisture in that first 4 inches or so. And going down a little bit deeper to 10 to 40 centimeters, this is the relative soil moisture, and it looks like across the west, the Continental Divide, where we saw so much precipitation during the earlier part of the summer and even into August, they did okay. Some of that soil moisture is still holding in that layer. We're seeing infiltration. So if you go back, it's pretty dry in the in the top layers, but if you go a little bit farther down, it's still okay. So you can see that infiltration there. And then the Sangre de Cristo Mountains also are doing okay, but the east really dry. The regional drought status still focuses the most significant drought across California, and folks know what's going on out there. If you've been watching the news, just really tragic and devastating conditions out there. So That's what we were dealing with back in 2011 to 2012, but now it's looking better. We've got pretty much D0 across the vast majority of the state. And taking a closer look, we're still at 13% in moderate drought, and that's really been the case, I think, for probably the last month or so. We haven't seen much change to the drought monitor, but Dave and I were discussing some ideas here about some things that we might want to look into. Going back 3 months, this would be into the early part of the summer, and we had some D2 out west, and we've pretty much lost that. And again, this hasn't really changed much since what we were looking at our last meeting. Now we can get into the extended climate outlooks, and all eyes really have been focused on the Eastern Pacific and this developing El Niño. Looks classic to me, really, with the anomalies here on the upper left showing that nice dark red area extending off the western South American coast all the way across through the Niño 3.4 region. And then of course there's this area up off the Baja extending out towards Hawaii that's also well above normal too. Looking at the bottom right, this is the sea surface temperature anomalies for the last 4 weeks, and there's some values here that are really impressive, over 3 degrees Celsius over a large area. And if we take a look at the regions here, Niño 3 region is 2.7 degrees centigrade above climatology, so pretty impressive, really, especially for the 3 regions to be above 2. It's nice. Hopefully this will translate into an active winter period for us. Looking at the bar charts from IRI and CPC, 100% chance of El Niño conditions through the autumn, and greater than 90% chance through the winter. So both these charts pretty much telling the same story. Lots of high probabilities of El Niño, and that's what one would expect with seeing such a large area of above normal temperatures in the Eastern Pacific. Here's the mid-September plume of the various dynamical models, statistical models, and then the CPC consensus. Again, I know it's difficult to see where the CPC consensus is, but it's kind of this pink line right through the center. And we're carrying 3-month anomalies over 2 degrees until about the December, January, February period. So that's suggesting a strong El Niño through that period, and the table on the bottom right showing all those beautiful 100% all the way through January, February, March. So fingers are crossed that this is going to deliver for us what it would typically do climatologically. So here's the precipitation outlook from CPC for October. And I know when we were looking at September at our last meeting, it was similar. We had this big area of above normal potential across like western New Mexico and most of Arizona, and I would have to say if it wasn't for what we're seeing now, I don't know if that outlook would have verified for most of New Mexico, except for maybe the far southwest. So hopefully October will look a little bit more like this, and we can spread the precipitation out rather than having just like 1 or 2 events. But that's typical of New Mexico, is to see our precipitation in just bursts. So the temperature outlook for October, below normal probabilities there for pretty much everybody. And then going through the fall into December, favoring much of the southern United States, which is more typical of an El Niño pattern, particularly Florida and southern areas of Texas. And the corresponding temperature outlook, looking for us to favor below normal temperatures. And then the northern United States favoring above normal temperatures, but as Sean was pointing out earlier, even though it's favoring above normal, it's still going into winter, so it's not like it's going to be, you know, the southern United States, but it'll still probably be cold. It's just not as cold as what they might normally see. Then taking a sneak peek into the January to March period, certainly I don't ever recall seeing 60% probabilities of above normal precipitation. especially over such a large area. This extends all the way from Southern California into southwest New Mexico, and then most of Florida,
Yeah.
with above normal precipitation probabilities for that 3-month period. Then as we go out to the April to June period, this is more in the spring, we lose all of that. And I thought this was kind of interesting, that everyone went back to equal chances. If you look at the March, April, May period, though, the lead right before this one, it does still show like an area of 40% across a good part of the southwest United States. So it looks like in June, something in the outlook, it drops off and we have equal chances everywhere. But maybe that'll trend towards having higher probabilities in the above normal category as we go through the winter. And the seasonal outlook for the droughts pretty much continuing to show what you would think for improvement across most of the southwest United States. So that's all that I have here, and I'll turn it back to Dave before we can go into our discussion.
All right, first of all, any questions for Brian and us here at the office?
Brian Holly Reed at the Journal. The January to August period, I think you said we're 4 inches above normal statewide in precipitation. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me go back. I think it was just right about that, yeah. Yeah. 3.71.
3.71?
Yes.
Okay, and how does that rank for wettest in our...
Third.
Third, okay, thank you.
So you have to go back to 1941
To be wetter than that, okay.
to be wetter than that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, if you want to have a discussion on the drought monitor, I think we can get that started, I think. And then we'll finish it up at the end, but I think with we've got D0 over most of the third of or quarter of the state on the west side, and then we got D1. And I've been out there servicing weather stations in Grant and Catron County, and I think there's been some folks who've also been out there noticing a lot of forage vegetation. Native grass is doing really well, and then with a lot of the rain we've been seeing, even in Cibola and McKinley, I think we're seeing some. I think we should talk about moving that, basically decreasing the D1 out on the west side. I haven't seen anything on the Arizona side about that, which they also have the patch of D2 over the Mogollon Plateau. So that's something we may want to communicate to Eric, looking at the Grant, at least the Grant and Catron.
Well, Dave, I think you can justify it with that NASA data we just showed Brian.
Yeah.
Before. It shows greater soil moisture, so
Yeah.
it shows that they've been getting the precipitation in there. That might be enough justification to reduce that down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think and also if Anne Marie has some data as well
Right.
on the stream flow. So,
Right.
but let's see how that works out.
And that doesn't include the 1 to 2 inches of rain
Right,
we just had last
Doesn't
night.
Yeah.
include what we had
Yeah.
here recently.
Yeah, so I move to consider that as editing that, pushing that west. The second thing I go ahead, Victor. Do you have some
Yeah, hey,
information?
this is Victor. I was going to suggest Bob to get from Catron County, west of Socorro County, southward, is doing just a broad one-category improvement.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That would eliminate a lot of D0. Those soil moisture charts in that area are really, really very impressive, as you asked me, as far as, giving us the rationale for moving, doing that broad one category improvement.
Yeah. Good. And I also went over in that area, that little island area of D0. I was there a couple of days, actually on Friday, and scouted out some parts of that. We've got one of the old, well, not old, but it's taken over the USR CRN site down in Pinion. And based off of the amount of water in the gauge, not very much, and so that was our job, was to empty that out, the Junor. And just looking at the vegetation, I didn't include pictures, but there was a lot of areas where it had rained. You could see it had rained a bit in the past, so there was a lot of native grasses out there, but they've all died. And it's very much very dry. I dug a little hole near the station, and it was pretty dry as far as I could go down in the rocks. So I think that was kind of one of my questions about that area, Chavez and far western Otero County. There were areas up on the Sacramentos that were very, very wet on the edge. That's the far northwest part of that little spot, and I could see that was no problem in keeping that as a D nada. But I think basic bottom line is I think we can keep that area, that D0 area, because I think we're seeing a lot of very dry conditions out there. And I was hoping to contact some ranchers out there, because there are some folks who live out there on the top of the northern part of the Guadalupe Mountains before we get to the Forest Service area.
And then I would add, Dave, that probably some of this area, even farther northeast, up towards Clovis and even Tucumcari, they only had one precipitation event in the entire month of September, and it was very spotty. It was like a little quasi-dry line type thing that popped some thunderstorms in this area, and then they had like nothing in August. And then that's, and when you look those deep soil moisture layers, they still haven't really recovered way down from what we were looking at when we had that major drought going into the year. So I could see maybe some of this getting expanded into D0.
Yeah, let's keep that on our possibilities. Communicate that out. I think. Go ahead.
Yes.
This is Victor. Brian, can you call the sport charts or the sport, soil moisture charts? I think they're very, very limiting. So in general, two things jumped out at me that, for your consideration. Like I said, one would be basically from Catherine County versus Socorro County south, all the way to the Mexico border, just doing a one category improvement. To remove by that D0.
Right.
But the other one is, like Brian pointed out, and I would suggest maybe, you talk about a flash drought, I would suggest that northeast corner of the state, maybe introducing some D0, perhaps in the Union County, Colfax, Harding, down towards Tucumcari even. The skip, that skip drought tool, look at the most recent one, which is from August 22nd through September 20th, the most recent 30-day one shows that entire Common Division 3 being in D4 drought at 30 days, at the 30-day mark, with 10% of normal rainfall.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely don't want to overlook that area because they were so wet before. It's been really dry out east.
That to me, that is making the flash drought big time. So I'm not sure how expansive you want to be in it, but at 60 days, I think Brian pointed out in the briefing, at 60 days, Union's wet, and it's wet down to almost a Tucumcari. By 30 days, it's well dry, somewhere there between 30 and 60, but the one kind of dry throughout is Colfax. So at the very minimum, I would say it's introducing D0 to Colfax County. And, how far east or southeast they want to take it's up to you. That shows them pretty good right there, that sport thing there.
Yeah, it's very illuminating.
Have you took him care northward into Union County and perhaps Colfax, or at least eastern Colfax? You could do some D0.
Yeah. It's interesting, I mean, on the Texas side, it's even, I mean, if
It's
you go
even
back.
worse, yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen Nielsen Gammon. I saw him moving D0 further east, you know, going, but I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, if you go, yeah, at the 60-day mark, David's a good point. I was on a Texas call yesterday. At the 60-day mark, we're still wet in Texas, so it's sort of like the same way as Union County is down towards Tucumcari.
Okay.
I mean, we can hold off, I guess, on the Union County and, you know, down towards Tucumcari, but I think I would definitely put this D0 in Colfax County there where it's dry.
Okay.
It's dry 30 days and 60 days in Colfax County.
Yeah.
But we really need to keep getting a look at in the next week or two for, you know, maybe degrading, you know, if it doesn't rain, degrading that extreme northeast part along the Texas border.
Yeah, and we didn't show as I've been tracking the prism temperatures, and particularly this in September, I think has been pretty. There's been, I don't know, 5 or 6 or more degrees above average for. Yeah, if you can pull that up for September, and it was not as warm in August, but it was still above average, and you know, in terms of the evapotranspiration losses in those areas, I think that we can't ignore that. So you do
You're
the
looking at mean?
Yeah, mean temperature and deviation. So that's over going from Curry all the way up along the side, and that's what 5 to 7 degrees.
5 to 7, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking at that area as that's a hard hit on the vegetation. Plus the soil moisture, you know, the backup for the list and the precip. So that just reinforces that thing,
Yeah,
that your move to open up a D.
And it's
D0.
interesting that we when we're even seeing this, I mean, just folks looking out onto the Albuquerque West Mesa, it was bright green, beautiful looking early in back in July, and so a lot of that grass grew nice and tall, and now it's just cured out. And I'll bet you it's probably like that in much of the east now. Lots of tall, dried out grass.
Yeah. I'll try to call some of our extension and the Ag Science Center in Clovis and Tucumcari to see what they think too. But I think just looking at this, it warrants it.
Yeah, David, I was just maybe look at the latest draft one today. There is D0 that extends to the Texas-New Mexico border. I guess in Roseville County and Curry counties, maybe you can extend a little bit westward to include all of those 2 counties. Maybe shoot the northward up towards Tucumcari, and then maybe add a D0 in for Colfax County.
Mm-hmm.
And then the area in between, just really monitor closely next week or 2.
Yeah.
If it stays dry, just jump out and still in that swath.
Okay.
What Harding and Union County.
Harding, yeah.
But they have
That really has a making. So between the temperature data you showed plus the soil moisture, it really has interesting makings of a flash drought up in there, at least the last 30 days.
Right, no, I agree. Okay.
Yeah, it's cloudy and it's sprinkling. We are so dry.
That's Curtis.
Is that Curtis or
I think it's all.
Raymond? I couldn't hear that. I couldn't quite hear that.
Maybe it wasn't.
I believe it's Curtis. Curtis, you're not coming in too loud.
Okay.
He must have dropped off.
Yeah, okay. Well, any more discussion on what Brian presented and a follow-up with the drought monitor? I think we'll address some of that more as we go along. All right. Very good. Thanks a lot for the discussion. Raymond, are you on?
I thought you were trying
Yes, sir, I am.
All right, so if we, you prepared for the reservoir status report?
Yes, sir, I
Very
am.
good, thank you.
I'll start on
It's all yours.
the Rio Grande. Pictorial is 16,024 acre feet. Let's see, Heron, 89,435. El Vado, 90,914. Abiquiu, 137,238. Cochiti, 47,322. Seattle and Butte is 167,366. And Caballo, 28,325. And over on the Pecos, Santa Rosa, 100,405. Sumner, 31,637. And Brantley, 27,525. Like in the Rio Grande, what we were hearing about this being the first rain event for September, it definitely showed we had done really well in keeping the river wet all up until just recently. It just started to break in the Slater Reach and then in the Santa Cacha Reach in just the last couple weeks or so. So, boy, that rain went away and flowed. And we tried augmenting it as well as we could, but we've been using a lot of storage for that. And the district is cutting back too. They've been using a lot of storage. So they're cutting their demand back. So just without the rain, we just don't have it. So it's starting to re-wet again with last night's rain. We're seeing in both reaches starting to kind of re-wet. But on the Pecos, we've done well all the way up to now also. It's still continuous, no breaks, no drying. We did start the bond pumps yesterday, and that's the first time we've had to augment flows almost the whole season. We started in the beginning of the season a little bit, and then the rains came, and of course the runoff was coming and just kept everything nice and fat. So we did start the bond pumps, and just to help out a little bit, but otherwise we haven't had any breaks in the Pecos. So we're doing real well on there so far. It's not take with bonds, it kind of props up the flows a little bit tighter than already, so it may not take a whole lot to keep it wet the rest of the season. But otherwise, yeah, we don't have the rains, we just don't have the help. And it was a lot of help so far this season. So we'll see what it does for September and October. We still have till the end of October for the irrigation season. So we'll see how we do. That's where I'm at, unless anyone has any questions or comments.
Oh, Raymond Ollie Reed at the Journal. What was your reading on El Vado?
90,914 acre feet. 90914.
All right, thank you. And you were saying you just had that the Rio Grande's been running wet until recently, and you had breaks in the Santa Cacha, and what was the other area?
East Letter Reach.
This letter, thank you.
Yeah. You bet. But yeah, we left the rains, flowed, and it went away.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Any questions for Raymond?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I saw on last Wednesday they shut off the Elephant Butte output.
Right, they did, and when they're done at at Caballo, that'll be it for the season.
Yeah.
When they're done releasing Mountain View to Caballo, and once Caballo shuts off, that'll be it for the season there. They'll be done.
Yeah.
Ray, is Caballo going to finish up this end of this month? I believe they are. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. But if it ends a little before, then so be it. But otherwise, when we see that release shut off in Caballo, that'll be it pretty much for the season. And they went further than they thought they were going to go also. You know, all this rainwater we were sending down to Elton Butte really prolonged their season a bit.
Excellent.
Sounds good. All righty.
This pen works.
Well, moving on. Is Chris Romero on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Chris. Do you have anything to share for the NRCS?
You know, not really. This is kind of my maintenance season in the summer and then early fall when I'm out either installing or fixing my sites. I'm doing the same thing you guys are. I'm watching the the ENSO indicators and everything, and I'm really hoping to see a shift as we move into October and some early snow that sticks around, unlike last year where we saw our last snows around the beginning of February, and then it kind of had all melted off by, a runoff started kind of early, about a month and a half early in March. So I'm hoping that it stays cool and snows a lot, and then we have a normal runoff and a good El Niño. But, I guess I can entertain any questions if anybody has them.
So are there any changes to the SNOTEL network?
No, I just got approval though for a new site out in the Valles Caldera, and we were gonna throw it up this summer, but all the paperwork took so long that we're already moving into fall, and we can't really do that at this point. So I think around next June or July we're gonna have a new site up out in the Caldera.
Is that a full SNOTEL or?
Yeah, it'll be a full SNOTEL with the whole suite of instrumentation and everything.
Cool.
Hey, Chris, this is Brian.
Hey, Brian.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. I'm curious. We've gone through many winters, and we're always like looking at the Sandias and the Manzanos. Do you know why there's not a SNOTEL up in those areas? Is it just
because there's really no usable watershed that's out there? I've asked that same question, and I guess there just aren't enough users along the eastern side of the mountain to warrant a SNOTEL site.
Okay, yeah, 'cause that's a closed basin, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, and that's the reason why there isn't one out there. I've thought about putting up we have a smaller weather site that I can throw up in about 2 days. It doesn't have all the instruments that the SNOTEL do, and it's not automated, so I'd have to go out and actually pull the data from it, but it'll give me soil moisture and temperature at wind, rain, precip, all that. But that's an option.
Yeah, because even in terms of fire concerns, I think that would be somewhat helpful with as much real estate there is out in that area. But maybe something to think about in the future.
Yeah, I asked the same question several months ago, and I got the same answer also, that it's a closed basin.
Is there a RAWS out there on the east?
We have
What?
RAWS?
Yeah. There's
I'm
one.
not sure.
Not
sure.
There's
Oak Flats.
Oak Flats. Is that still going on?
South. Yeah, it's
Okay.
Yeah, Oak Flats is there south of the Harris.
There's nothing on the north side. It would be nice.
Yeah.
I can propose it again and see what happens, this winter, and then let them mull over it all winter long, because spring and summer is when we put something up.
That Sandia Center, Natural History Center, has weather, but they're not connected up. To the.
Oh, where's the Sandia?
It's
is it in T. Harris area, or is it?
Yeah, no, it's Cedar Crest.
Cedar Crest. Okay.
But they're at about 6,900 feet. It's a nice little spot.
What's it called?
Sandia Natural History Center.
Sandia.
They're affiliated with the Museum of Natural History, owned by EPS.
To go up there and talk to them.
Yes.
If they have Wi-Fi, then it'll be fairly easy to get them online.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Any more questions for Chris? Well, we're looking for that first snow day. Let us know when
Yeah, me
when you
too.
see snow. Yeah, waiting for those pictures to come in, seeing snow on the ground. So it's we'll be happy.
Yeah, I'm gonna go do some work in November up in the caldera, so I'm hoping to have some good snow up there by then. So maybe I'll get some good pictures,
Yeah.
and I'll bring them back.
That'd be great. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know,
Thanks.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
the caldera, will that be feeding into the Jemez Reservoir area or on the Puerco?
It's on the let me think here where we had like 4 site locations. It's on the east side of Little Redondito. So I think that's into the Jemez side.
In the Jemez Reservoir area?
Yes.
Okay, cool, thanks.
You're welcome.
Alrighty. I think Anne Marie is on. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, welcome, Anne Marie. See, Brian has your report up, so you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I am going to be presenting percent of average stream flow conditions here for a selection of 21 river basins that were chosen as being relatively unmanaged, which everyone knows it's hard to find in New Mexico. What I'm presenting is the cumulative average stream flow for the water year, so October through the end of August, as compared to the average stream flow for each particular gauge for the period of record for that gauge. If we count average stream flow as 90 to 110% of historical average, then 14 of these 21 stations were at or above average flow for the water year through the end of August. This is similar to last month. The high O'Neill Creek near Cimarron was at 776% of historical average due to a series of high flows in the last 4 months. And the Delaware River at Red Bluff was the low at about average. For the group as a whole, the median annual average was about 99% of historical average for the 21 basins. Looking at runoff conditions by basin, the San Juan River Basin is represented by the gauge on the Animas River. That's number 19 in the table there, and that was at 110% of average. The Upper Rio Grande tributaries, those are numbers 7 through 12, range from 67 to 108% of average, with the Jemez River, number 13, at 83% of average, and the Upper Rio Grande main stem represented by the Rio Grande at Taos Junction Bridge, and that was at 95% of historical average. Canadian River Basin, the Upper Canadian River, the tributaries in Colfax County, those are numbers 1, 2, and 3, range from 85 to 776% of average. That includes O'Neill Creek that I mentioned earlier. The tributaries in Mora County, numbers 5 and 6, 99 to 105% of average, and the main stem, number 4, about 67% of historic average. Moving on to the Pecos Basin, the Upper Pecos in San Miguel County, that's numbers 14 and 15. Pecos River at Pecos and the Gallinas at Montezuma. Those are at 103 and 123% of average, respectively. Lower Pecos in Otero and Eddy counties, numbers 16, 17, and 18. These gauges have stream flow conditions that range from 52 to 131% of historic average. And finally, the Gila Basin in Grant County, sites 20 and 21. Moyan Creek is at 85% of average, and the Gila River at Red Rock is at 83% of average. And most of the averages that we're presenting here are similar to what were reported for the end of July, so we're still looking at the effects of some decent stream flow for a few months in these basins. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
All right.
Any Any questions? Well, yeah, just looking at the 20 and 21, not too bad, but still below average. Both Mogollon and Gila, 85 and 83. So, just an observation there. Okay. If no questions, we can move on to the state engineer. I think we have Ken and I think Molly, is that right?
Yes, we're here.
So we've got your PowerPoint up.
Okay. So this is our standard PowerPoint that we've been presenting that shows some graphical representation of the reservoir levels around the state. The numbers should match pretty closely to what Raymond had. As far as when I was writing them down, they look pretty close. So I don't see any point in going through Brian, if you could go through slide by slide, but I'm not going to talk too much about the different levels. It just should give us a pretty good representation of the current level, and then we can also, the dotted line is the last month's level. So if you could just scroll through. So Navajo, not much change, a little bit. Well, Santa Rosa, yeah, Sumner.
So those come down.
Brantley, that reflects, right, the water they sent down to Texas, I believe.
How much was that Texas wanted that they stored there?
Maybe Raymond can answer that. I can't answer that question.
Is that more than 10?
They released, they released something like 35,000 or so. I mean, don't quote me on that exactly. It's just somewhere in that range.
I thought it was in the 30,000 or so range, yeah.
Yeah, it's somewhere between 30, and then they're also releasing some for New Mexico, not for delivery, so they're still releasing now.
Okay, yeah, because that shows only a little more than 10 change.
That's correct. The exact numbers I wouldn't quote, but that's not the volume of water that's been released out of Brantley.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. They've been holding on to those since last year, so.
Okay.
The water in Brantley.
Yes, Yeah, it was last September's big rain event.
Right.
Yeah, Red Bluff wasn't able to handle it.
So then Heron, well below average.
Doesn't matter.
Otto. Cavacue. Still, the Rio Grande is just not in the same rosy shape as
That's terrible.
the below average. So we'll, as usual, put these slides on our Drought Task Force website so anybody can look at them.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you can see, look at Elephant Butte, 167 compared to 154. That little bit increased. A lot of people were very happy for that, just a small increase in not much, but but that's the one we look at when we're very concerned about down in the southern Elephant Butte Irrigation District and El Paso in the south. So
We'll keep hoping for the snow, right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but we're optimistic. But I mean, in terms of looking at 1 year's worth of snow, it's not going to be enough.
Right.
But look at long-term wanted to bring that up. All right, any questions for Molly? Very good. I appreciate it. I like seeing the changes. You know, the monthly changes. That's why I like to see these. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. The graphs are very nice. Thank you.
Good.
Nice to get a visual on that.
So it's good to get the numbers and the graphs to see them. All right. So Les and Ryan were not available today, so they did send their weekly crop report. Looking at this is week ending September 20, and since last night he sent it, I didn't get a chance to really go over it. I just briefly went over some things. Just looking at the text part, you know, reiterating our warm temperatures on the east side of the state. Crops in kind of the middle, the crops continued to be rated in good to excellent condition. Apple harvest was underway in the northwest. Many roadside vendors offering quality produce. Fieldwork and crop development continued to advance well under mostly optimal conditions. Good sign. Reports indicated that pasture conditions were adequate in many locations, although the need for additional rainfall remained a concern for ranchers in isolated portions of the southwest. Pecan nut set was reported 11% heavy, 82% moderate, 7% light. Hail damage in all crops were reported as 4% light, 4% moderate. Wind damage reported 6% light, 2% moderate. Stock water supplies were reported as 4% very short, 21 short, 74% adequate, 1% surplus. So things look fairly good across the agricultural sector. A few areas were concerned with pasture conditions, kind of reiterating our look at the drought monitor in those areas. So I think if anybody has anything to add in the agricultural sector, please speak up.
Dave, this is something that I'd be interested in finding out more about, this hail damage.
Yeah.
Like where and when.
Okay.
Because that's really helpful for our storm verification program. A lot of times we have the warnings and the products out, but we don't hear about any of the impacts. And this is one of the things that we can specifically report in the performance management system is crop damage. So if that's some way that we can also integrate information, that'd be great.
And wind as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and wind.
And what's light? I wonder what light would be.
Yeah. So I'd be interested in some of
I
that.
don't know what the scale is.
I'll ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, the Grinch that we had 2 weeks ago might be outstanding.
Yeah, I think that's...
Is that good? I mean, that's
I think so far, I've talked to our chili guy in NMSU, and he said things are looking good there.
Awesome.
It'd be nice to hear some farmer reports, what they're thinking in terms of the costs of the irrigation. Although they did get a little bump more than last year, but that's still not good. It's terrible. But I'll go ahead and I'll follow up with the hail and the wind damage. I did get some from July. I think I reported it during the task force meeting, but that was earlier in the summer. I think that was also reported in the Weather Service at the Senator East's office. Okay, and the next item on our agenda is the forestry, and Susan also emailed this morning and said she's wasn't available, and I told her I would read her report. It's not very long. It was just an email. Basically, 3 projects, three different topic areas: the forest health report, and saying that though the last 30 days have been a bit dry for some locations in the northern half of New Mexico, the summer monsoon was fair to good for most of the state. Draft aerial detection survey ADS data from the northern third of New Mexico suggests that bark beetle activity was less widespread and severe than activity observed during the preceding few years. The uncharacteristic wet spring is the primary explanatory factor for decreased bark beetle activity this year. The notable exception was heavy spruce mortality due to Dendrotrochinus rufipennis, don't quote me on those, I spelled it right, at the northern New Mexico border. A massive spruce beetle outbreak in Colorado is slowly marching south. Our forest health specialist Tom Ziegler's recent ground observations include heavy western tent caterpillar activity in the Santa Fe National Forest and unprecedented salt cedar defoliation along the Rio Grande corridor from Cruces to Elephant Butte. In addition, defoliation events have been more impressive than bark beetles this year. The second topic was fire report. State Forestry was responsible for fire suppression on non-federal and non-municipal lands. So far this calendar year, New Mexico has had 270 fires affecting 10,067 acres on those lands. New Mexico has provided wildland firefighters and equipment to assist with out-of-state fires all season. We currently have personnel in Texas, California, and Colorado. Earlier this summer, we also had firefighters assisting crews in Washington, Oregon, and Montana. And the third and final section of her report was the projects. So she said next month she'll include a report on projects that we're doing to reduce wildfire risk and improve forest and watershed health across the state. So that sums up the forestry report from Susan Rich. So if you have any specific questions about that, you can either email or call Susan or email to myself or Brian, and we'll forward it on to Susan. All right, so the next to last thing on our agenda is the Farm Service. I don't think I need to get Joyland or Emelita on the call at some point and give us an update, any changes to any of the changes to the emergency, what do you call it, the declarations. I couldn't remember that word, the declaration regions. I don't know if there's been any easing. I know there's some timelines, like from this point, and we'll have to get some updates on that at some point. All right, so we're at the end of toward the end of our call, and if there's any other topics, please speak up. Any other things to add? If you thought of any other areas for the drought monitor, feel free to say that.
Dave, this is Molly. This isn't a drought monitor question. This is a National Weather Service question. I was talking to John Longworth yesterday, and he and I are both having a lot of trouble accessing any National Weather Service NOAA site. Is there something that recently, in the last month, changed?
I'm not aware of anything.
No, I mean they did have issues with the central server, but that was that one day that was pretty isolated. Not as there shouldn't be a continuous issue on any of those. It may be sporadic, but nothing continuous.
Okay, well, I hadn't talked to John about it, and I talked to him yesterday, and he said, yeah, I'm having the same problem, and so I just set it up, and I was curious, but maybe I need to talk to my IT people.
Are you trying to do that like on a tablet or a smartphone, or just a regular PC?
Yeah.
Maybe if you forward the exact URLs, maybe that would help. Maybe they're doing some update or something.
Yeah, it might be dependent on that. But I don't think there's an issue on a continuous basis.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything.